All right. And according to this, we are now live. I don't know how many people are going to be watching this thing because it's like, what, 1
Midnight.
o'clock in the morning
Yeah,
where you're at or so?
midnight right now.
Midnight? Yeah. Gotta figure it's going to be late. But hey, y'all can watch it when you get up in the morning. How about that? But what is going on? And welcome to Joe's Geek Show, the video series where we talk comics. And we are back with a live stream? What? That's interesting. That's different. I haven't done a live stream since my baby's 2 now. That was probably sometime way before that. So thank you for technological achievements that are the, Ethernet cables, because that's what makes it all possible. Apparently, that's all I was missing. And now I've got it done. And joining me today is my good pal Nerdscum. How you doing, buddy?
What up? Doing all right, man. How about it? We're gonna dive into this thing tonight. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So today we are talking about the brand new animated DC movie, Batman: The Long Halloween, which of course is an animated adaptation off the graphic novel of the same name by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. And we've definitely, we've had a little bit of a discussion on it already, kind of leading up to this. You've already done your own individual review on it, which I've got that linked in the description down below. Go check it out. It is an awesome video. So kind of like our Justice League collaboration, it's going to be kind of a similar thing where we're going to talk about, sort of like the overall movie, mostly things we liked, and then we'll kind of cap it off towards the end with maybe some things we didn't like and perhaps where we would like to see, pretty much where the sequel could go, because obviously there, are some little changes to it from the graphic novel.
So of course there will be spoilers, and I don't know if the next one counts as a sequel. This is definitely more like the Dark Knight movie they put out, where it's like they just split it in half.
Part 1, part 2. I mean, to me, if it's separated and it comes out separated, I look at it as it's a sequel until they smash it together. I don't know. They did the same thing with like the Death and Return of Superman also.
Yeah, and
with that one. So
yeah,
we'll see. But we'll go ahead and start with, the movie itself and whether or not we liked it, and then some things we did like. So Nerdscum, would you like to go ahead and take it away since you're the guest?
Yeah, sure, man. So in general, I enjoyed the movie. I had fun with it for the most part. There's, like we said, we're going to get to it later. There's a few things that didn't necessarily work for me. And it's, an understatement to state that, like, again, adapting something like The Long Halloween is definitely not an easy task, to say the least. They definitely made a lot of changes. They were very liberal with a lot of the things that they changed, but in general, they stayed very true to the essence of the book and the essence of the story. So overall, I, for the most part, really enjoyed it. I had a lot more fun with. I was kind of dreading it going in, because anyone who watched our video on the Batman Hush adaptation, that was something that, while it had its highlights, I did not really like it that much overall, and a lot of the changes they made I felt were highly detrimental to the movie. But this one, I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed it a good bit more than I thought I would.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, when the first time I saw the trailer to this movie, I honestly didn't know what to think, because as we have, discussed in the past too, between you and me, is that the DC animated movies can be rather hit and miss at times, especially lately. It's been kind of like they've been sort of mediocre to extremely bad in certain cases, with some of them being, passable with some problems, and so with this one, I was just kind of like, what category is this going to fall into? And then, of course, when we got the voice cast and we got hearing that Jensen Ackles is playing Batman, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, what would his approach to Batman be? Is he just going to, I mean, as you had also said in a previous conversation we had as well, is he just going to do that supernatural kind of gruff kind of voice that, we're all really accustomed to hearing? Because anytime I see him in a movie or a TV show, like, that's kind of the approach he tends to take a lot of the times.
which that's not his real voice. Anyone who's seen him in like an interview, it's like, oh wow, yeah, like that he's doing like his action movie guy like voice for it. But also anyone who's seen Under the Red Hood also knows that he is capable of doing different stuff. So so yeah, I was a little worried when they announced him for the role, not because he's a bad actor, but just because I was like, I don't know what, like you were saying, I don't know what his version of Batman's going to sound like. And there have been in the DC animated universe that they had previously, I was not a big fan of that Batman voice. And
the James O'Mara voice.
Yeah, he's not horrible, and I know he has his fans, but I wasn't a big fan of it. He felt like the perfect person to voice like Tom King's Batman. Like, oh, you're a robot, cool.
Yeah, so we can definitely safely say that Jensen Ackles' portrayal was actually pretty decent. He had a distinction between his Bruce Wayne and his Batman, which is something we always look for because, you know, kind of like the Jason O'Mara, for example. I mean, I did like the New 52 Batman to a degree while he was Batman. But when he was Bruce Wayne, that's where he kind of lost me a little bit because there really was no distinction between his voices. He kept the same tone throughout, whereas this one, you know, he actually tries to. And in that essence, too, I'll say for overall, I also really enjoyed the film. From, you know, definitely from start to, you know, almost finish. I thought it was, you know, I thought it flowed really well. I didn't feel like it dragged at all. The pacing of the movie was definitely quick because it was covering a lot of ground. This movie, I think, is only like, it was like 82, 89 minutes long. So it's a pretty tight film in terms of its length. So it doesn't really, I didn't feel like it dragged really in any places. And as far as an adaptation goes, yeah, I was definitely entertained with the action sequences, especially towards the end. There's this amazing sequence between Batman chasing after the Joker that I thought was awesome. You know, we'll probably cover that a little bit more too. Also, again, yeah, we're going to be filling spoilers with this sucker too. So
you're poor.
But yeah, I gotta say I was pleased with this film.
Yeah, and I mean, like, again, I've got it right here, the info on the movie. It's 85 minutes. So they managed to cover a lot of ground in 85 minutes while also keeping, like, the action set pieces pretty bulky and only really kind of dropping little bits of the story here and there. Like, you know, as I said, there's a lot of things they changed, but I felt that, like, with what they kept, like, the pacing of the book, like, unless you're gonna do one like 4-hour long movie, you're not going to be able to fit all that in there. So the way that they kind of switched it up and kind of moved around some action set pieces and inserted some action set pieces really kept the movie feeling fresh and moving. And, you know, as much as I would love like a slower pace, like noir story, like they're trying to appeal to a mass audience, and the majority of people, that's not really what they want.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to a degree, it's, you know, really, if we wanted a full-on long Halloween thing, it would have to be like it'd probably have to be a mini series.
Yeah, because I mean, again, like, and you know, it's like when you go through, I'm not the first person to say this, but Long Halloween is essentially The Godfather. Like, if you've ever watched or read The Godfather, it has the same methodical pacing. It reuses many of the ideas. On top of this being like a Batman book, it is kind of a love letter to The Godfather and Silence of the Lambs.
That's a good comparison. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's some scenes in this book that are just straight, and they carry over to the movie. There are some scenes in here that are completely just ripped straight. You can call it an homage if you like. And now I think that's what most people refer to it as, because it is such a beloved Batman book. But in reality, there's some scenes in the book and in the movie that are kind of just ripped off directly from The Godfather and Silence of the Lambs.
Well, you know, if it works, it works, right? And yeah, I mean, it works.
It managed to make a Batman story that even to this day is hailed as one of the greatest Batman stories ever told. So apparently they did something right, and I can't argue. I really love the book Long Halloween. I really love the story, so I'm not complaining about it. It's just one of those things.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I'll tell you one thing that's interesting now, seeing an animated version of this film. I was also watching it, and in my mind, I was also making comparisons to Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, because obviously some of the story was a basis for that movie as
Yeah.
well. And it's very interesting. I was like, "Ooh, that was in The Dark Knight. That was in The Dark Knight. That was in The Dark Knight."
Right.
Just constantly doing that throughout the movie, which was really interesting. So what did you think of of the characters in the movie in terms of portrayals?
I thought that the portrayals were really good, and I did actually want to take a minute to talk about some of the cast from the movie.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
Especially because I didn't realize this when I did my video on it, but as I was kind of looking over the cast again, there were a couple of things that I found out about certain cast members that I didn't know that I really should have addressed in my video. So we already talked about Jensen Ackles as Bruce Wayne Batman, really solid. Harvey Dent is voiced by Josh Duhamel. Duhamel. I'm bad.
I think it's Duhamel.
I'm bad with pronouncing names, but he also does an excellent job. And especially like within the context of the movie, they telegraph the more kind of damaged aspects of his character a little bit more than they do in the book, really highlighting that shift to Harvey Dent that we're going to see in the second part of this movie. Because one of the other things that's interesting about this movie is it was originally supposed to be the first movie in this new DC animated universe that they have, that they ended up starting off with Superman, Man of Tomorrow, I think it is.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then carried it on with the Justice Society of America movie.
Yeah,
This
how'd
was
you feel about that one again?
Yeah, let's just not talk about that one. But yeah, this was actually supposed to be the movie that kicked that universe off, but because the Batman got pushed back in filming, they decided to push back this as well. It still didn't come out before that, so I really don't see what the point was, but here we are. But yeah, so like not only are they setting up Batman, this is kind of the ground floor for this new Batman, but it's also supposed to be kind of giving you a sense of this world. And as such, there are certain things in the movie that they emphasize more or redirect your attention to a little bit more in order to set up what Batman is like in that shared universe. One of them being Harvey Dent and the fact that he's going to be Two-Face. And he did an absolutely fantastic job. The other one that I really need to talk about, because I did not in my video, is Nina Riviera as Selena Kyle Catwoman.
Mm-hmm.
Who also does a fantastic job in this movie. And she is another character that, while she actually has less scenes than she has in the book, she is a far more prominent character in the story. Where, like, in the book, she's part of the ensemble, but in the movie, she's one of the main characters of the book. And they put her in scenes that she wasn't necessarily in the book. But the reason why I also wanted to mention her is, like, whenever I did my video, I didn't realize that she recently passed away.
Oh, she did.
And not only did she pass away, she died saving her son's life. Like,
Wow.
her and her son had rented like a little pontoon boat and gone out on the water, and they decided to go swimming. And the reports I read of it while prepping for this were kind of vague, but it seems like the area they were in, there was a lot of like underwater vegetation that made it very difficult to swim. And she managed to get her son back to the boat and save his life, but she didn't make it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to point that out. Like, not only is she good in the movie, and this is like one of her last performances, but while we're talking about a movie that is about heroes, it's like, how can you pass up mentioning like a real life one who gave her life for another person? So she deserves a lot of credit, and I think even at the end of the movie, I think the movie might be dedicated in memory to her, or maybe that's, I saw a thing where the second one is. I'm not sure if the movie was completed before she passed away or not. Again, I don't have all the facts on it. I literally just learned about this today, and was like scrambling to get all the information together on that. But I wanted to mention it.
Well, yeah, definitely. Thanks for mentioning it. That's definitely that was news to me. I really had no idea. I don't recall seeing anything in the credits about a dedication to the movie towards her. So it could be the second one, or it could have just been an after credits thing. I'm not really sure because
Right.
I didn't watch the end of the credits. Heck, I don't even know if there was any end credit scenes,
I
but
think there was, but I don't
was there?
recall off the top of my head. I
Ah,
don't recall. But okay, so yeah, I wanted to give some special attention on her, but
mhm.
moving on so that we don't take too long going through the cast. Troy
Right.
Baker comes back as Joker. He's awesome as always. And then we've got Billy Burke doing Commissioner Gordon, and I think he also did a really fantastic job. Although, yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I read the book. In the book, is he already Commissioner Gordon? I know that he just got a promotion, but I can't remember if he's actually commissioner or not. Um,
I don't. I think he's still a captain.
yeah, I thought so too. And I actually kind of think that in the movie, his wife mentions to his daughter, who, yeah, they did fix that from the book, because in the book, if you remember, Barbara Gordon is his niece, kind of like in the old Adam West show, as opposed to being
Mm,
his daughter. Because at the time, the book was intended to be a sequel to year one, and if it's supposed to be year two, it doesn't make the most sense that like his daughter would be that age that they wanted her to be.
right.
It didn't work, but for this they fixed it. So yeah. And let's see here. I mean, Calendar Man is done by David Dastmalchian. Dastmalchian. I'm bad with names, folks. Either way, he makes
It's
a
okay.
really good, creepy Calendar Man in the vein of Hannibal Lecter. Because
Yeah.
Calendar Man in the book and in this movie, it's just Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, but I
Um,
will say, in terms of portrayals, though, I mean, it was one of the few times Calendar Man's been on screen, and I'm actually like,
invested, yeah. Well, I mean, this was, I think, the first time in a story, if I'm not mistaken, the first time where they were like, let's like not make Calendar Man a joke.
mm-hmm,
And like since then they've gone like to like in the beginning of Rebirth and at the end of New 52 they went to the other extreme where he actually has like this metamorphosis cycle that he goes through where he gets old and then young and all this stuff. But like this is a really solid version that doesn't like break the realism of the character but still has like an interesting thing going on. And then also, again, there's so many people in this movie, and all of them do really solid jobs. But I did also want to mention that Alistair Duncan is really good as Alfred, even though he doesn't get a lot of screen time. And then Julie Nathanson as Duella Dent, or sorry, Gilda Dent, Harvey's wife. She's also fantastic. And then Jack Quaid is the voice of Alberto Falcone, the youngest son, I believe, of the Falcone family. And then we also have Titus Welliver, who does Carmine Falcone. And he does absolutely. All in all, the voice cast is just solid. And the characterization of most of them is really, really on point. And even when they alter it a little bit, like it still fits in within this world, and it's not something that is so different from what you know of that character that it's distracting.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and I agree with pretty much all that. It was definitely the best when it comes to performances. Yeah, I liked them all. I didn't really have any complaints as far as any of them go. And I really liked also like what was it Dumal?
Yeah,
Yeah, as Harvey Dent. I thought it was really interesting to see the way he played Harvey Dent, where there was definitely some times during his dialogue and stuff where there like these little moments where sometimes his voice would do this thing when you kind of sounds like he was sort of like at that point of duality. Like I remember during the what is it, the coin flip where they're
yeah,
thinking about burning the money. And just the way he's looking at it, and he's just like, I'm of two minds. Just like definitely that dark undertone that's there to his voice,
yeah.
that I
When
think
he
is like really interesting, alluding to later on, of course, him becoming Two-Face.
Yeah, like there are moments where he drops his voice down an octave a little bit. Another great example of that is like after the first killing happens in the movie, and he's like yelling at Gordon about like, why weren't your men watching him and all this kind of stuff. Like he drops a couple of octaves there, and it's early on in the movie, so it's not as noticeable, but it's definitely there. So yeah, he does a great job in that performance. And again, like that performance is much more, the character's a lot more uneven than he is in the book. So him being able to hit all those marks without you feeling that like it's off is a real challenge, and he does it exceedingly well.
Yeah, it definitely makes me feel like that his turn is going to be, pretty believable in the second movie.
Yeah. Well, and
which
again,
is definitely something we were going for.
Yeah, and again, like I think they're going to be putting a lot. I think once we get to the second movie, I think it's going to be more of like he's going to be featured, like because in the book he's heavily in the book as Two-Face, but it's mostly in the last quarter of the book where most of his stuff as Two-Faced happens. Where I really feel like in the second half of this movie, he's going to be kind of the main focus in terms of villains, with Poison Ivy playing a close runner-up to that.
Yeah, no, I mean just from the what is it? Just from the box art of the second movie, like he's very prominent on the cover.
Yeah.
Whereas here on this one, it's the Joker.
Right.
That's really front and center.
And Joker is given the most screen time out of like all the villains because Joker sells movies. Yeah.
Hey, he does. That's just facts, And I will say, like Troy Baker as the Joker is definitely a really interesting portrayal. Like to a degree, there are times where I somewhat have trouble telling the difference between him and Mark Hamill's voice a little bit.
Yeah.
Because he's a little more. I guess he's a little more gargly at in certain instances, but he still does a pretty good, like I would say, interpretation or it almost sounds like it's what he's trying to do. Is he's trying to do like a Mark Hamill thing.
Well, yeah, because the first time he's brought in to do Joker, I've only ever played one of them, so I'm not as familiar. But isn't the first time they brought him in to play Joker was to replace Mark Hamill in the Arkham games?
Yeah, Arkham Origins was the first time Joker or Troy Baker came in to play the Joker, and then of course they liked him so much, they're like, okay, let's just use him in the Assault on Arkham.
Yeah, and like he does a great job, but I also, because the thing is, like, he does a great job of doing kind of a bit of the Mark Hamill Joker, especially in his laugh, but also bringing other elements to it. Because let's be honest about this, Mark Hamill, as he's gotten older, his Joker doesn't sound the same anymore anyway. Like he still does a good Joker, but it's not the same as it was if you go back and watch like the first or second season of Batman the Animated Series. Just as you get older, your vocal cords change, and the structure of your mouth changes, and you gain weight, you lose weight, all that changes what you're able to do vocally. So it's not the same. So he's a very good replacement, and I think he does an excellent job in the movie. And I think that the movie was actually pretty smart to pick out that Joker sequence towards the end of the movie and really focus that as the climax, the bigger climax of this first half of the movie, or of their two-part movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's what we're saying. Troy Baker, solid Joker. Really dig him. What did you think about the animation?
The animation I felt was really solid. Again, like it is so different from the book, just so different. But like at the same time, it's like, how are you really going to approximate Tim Sale's artwork properly in animation? Like I love his artwork, but the truth of the matter is, if you tried to do that artwork in a animated movie where it's moving, where it's not still images, number one, it'd be expensive as hell, and number two, it wouldn't really hold up. Because especially like with Batman, when you look at Batman throughout the course of the book, Batman sometimes looks completely different depending on what panel he's in. A lot of it has to do with the mood and the lighting and the feel of that particular image. So it'd be hard to maintain a character model and fluidity of that character in that style. But now, mind you, this is done in the same style that they're doing every movie for this universe, which I, in general, I felt that they did a good job of maintaining a kind of noir feel to the
Hmm.
world and to the story. It's not as in-depth or as dark as the book is, but it still works for the most part. And I have to say that, like, I've said this in every video I've done about all three movies that are now in this universe, it is a massive step up from like the new 52 movie universe animation style that they were doing. Just a massive step up because, like, and also I want to give credit to the director of this movie, who is, let's see here, he is, I've got it right here. Sorry, guys. Chris Palmer. So Chris Palmer, yeah. I want to give credit to him because one of my biggest complaints with those older movies was a lot of times in the action sequences, especially, you can tell that they went for whatever was the cheapest way to do it, as opposed to what was the best series of shots and movements to tell that part of the story. In this movie, like when you're in an action sequence, the shots are not only cinematic, but they also feel like the best shots to give you the impact and the feel that they're trying to convey for that moment. So it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's certainly not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a vast improvement, and I definitely enjoyed it.
Right on. Yeah, I also really enjoyed the animation style too. Like, I will say, I actually didn't mind the New 52 style all that much. Yeah, there was like sometimes during the action sequences, like you said, I think there was like definitely some lag with some of the frames at times.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, overall, it just felt really cheap to me. When I was watching those movies, it didn't feel like I was watching a movie. It felt like I was watching a Saturday morning cartoon,
right.
in terms of the animation quality. Whereas these movies, they feel a little bit more like movies.
Mhm.
Not the most expensive movies, but they do feel like movies. They feel more cinematic, and I think the animation style has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, they kind of just they got those few extra pages for movement and whatnot and stuff,
Yeah,
and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and yeah, it would definitely would have been, I can understand when you say it definitely would have been a challenge, uh, to take the actual Tim Sale art and try to animate it and stuff like that. I mean, nothing short of a motion comic is going to get that effect
yeah,
of you being able to use Tim Sale's art, especially with it being semi-abstract to a degree, whereas in a movie it has to be a consistent tone for the most part. And I definitely like some of the choices that they made with some of the art and whatnot, and in terms of like the character design and stuff. It almost like even though it's in the style of the new, this newer sort of DC universe that they seem to be building, there also seemed to be some like I don't know if they were like not specifically, or if they were just or if they just wanted to bring those styles back a little bit. Like Catwoman almost kind of looked like her design from the animated series a little bit, with the gray suit and
yeah,
whatnot. And then, of course, the Batmobile. I swear it looked like the Batmobile from the season 4 when they
yeah.
did the redesigns. And again, I don't know if that was just something they decided to be like, oh, that would look cool. And, is it an Easter egg? I got no idea. But I, you
Well, and
know,
that's something that I also actually didn't really think about all that much, but now that you're saying it, it occurs to me. Like, number
mhm,
one, yeah, it should be mentioned that a lot of these choices that they're making are made because this has to fit into the style of a universe they're building. But also, when I look at the things that they've changed from the book in terms of design choices, they have gone with iconic. You
mhm,
know, like the Catwoman suit that they put her in, it's not the one from the book, but it is, when you look at it, that is kind of the general image. It's either that or the black jumpsuit. Those are what people think of when they think Catwoman, you know?
right.
And like Batman doesn't look like Batman in the book, but when you look at him, he looks like the Batman that's on 90% of t-shirts and merchandise and all those things that are out there. And like the Batmobile, while it's not necessarily the most inventive or creative version of the Batmobile, when you look at it, it has all the elements of the most iconic Batmobiles, kind of very much kind of minimized for to fit the style of animation that they're doing.
Mhm. Yep, yeah, and that's what I was, kind of thinking of too. It's like, like I said, I didn't know if they were supposed to be Easter eggs or if they just went with the most recognizable, versions of some of these characters in terms of their designs and stuff, you know. But overall, just to kind of wrap up the animation section itself, yeah, I was very pleased with it. It was visually appealing. It was nice and smooth. And what else can I say about it? It created a very fun looking and good looking movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, there's something to be said about iconic because, and it's like some of the complaints, like when you're doing the new 52 style, like the previous movies universe that they did, that is very much straying away from the iconic, And I know there's a lot of people who just don't care for those versions of the character designs, so it makes it a lot harder for them to engage with the movie. So, like, in doing this as part of the universe and falling back on something that everyone recognizes and agrees, yep, that's what Batman looks like. Yep, that's what Catwoman looks like. You get a lot less resistance from the mass audience that you're trying to bring in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I gotta say, I was that audience, and I didn't resist. I just enjoyed it for what it was at the very end.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're reaching the 30-minute mark here. So are there any other real big positives that you'd like to say about the movie before we kind of start digging into some of the some of the criticisms?
It's hard to, because like a lot of the things that I really, really thought were solid, we've already kind of touched on in little places here and there. I do, for the most part, really enjoyed the writing of the film. Again, I kind of mentioned this before, but the way that they kind of mixed and matched and tried to take this story and put it into more of an action movie format is no small feat. And despite the fact that when we start talking about the things we didn't like, a lot of the things I don't like have to do with the scripting of this movie. It could have been so much worse. It could have been so much worse. So yeah, I think that the screenwriter definitely deserves, who is, I think it's Tim Sheridan is the screenwriter of the film. Let me double check that real quick, just because I want to make sure that I'm getting it right here. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, Tim Sheridan. Yeah, and he's the guy who's going to be writing like the sequel to the Shazam movie and stuff like that. So he's got experience like working with DC characters, and I think he does a really good job of kind of trying to serve both masters of like telling the basic story of the Long Halloween while also making a movie that's not going to bore, 13-year-olds who buy this movie because they want to see Batman kick butt.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of some aspects of writing that that I can really turn into positives, there are like a few things where at first they kind of started one way, but then they kind of shifted towards more of the negative. But there is one running joke in this movie that I always thought that I just laughed at every time, and it was the turn one way, turn around, the guy's gone kind of thing.
Yeah,
they actually play that quite a bit in this movie, and I don't know, I caught myself laughing every time, even though towards the end may have been a little overplayed.
Well, and in general, it's like it's a joke that we get now in almost every Batman media, like in one way or the other, even if it's like in Batman Earth 1 where they subvert it, where like Batman's talking to Gordon and then Gordon turns around and Batman's not there, and then Batman, off panel, Batman's like, I'm over here, and he turns and Batman's at the window, so like, and even in like the Zack Snyder movie where like all the Justice League except for Flash, har, he's the fastest, but he's too slow to keep up, like they all just disappear. Like we get it in every form of media now. So the fact that like it still kind of made me laugh and I didn't just roll my eyes at it was kind of good, and it helps that the first time we see it is Alfred doing it to Batman.
Yeah.
And then Batman's not like, well, that's what that feels like. He just goes, I hate when he does that, which gives you the impression that it's something he picked up from Alfred.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really enjoyed about it, because like the first time it happened, 'cause I was expecting that too, to a degree, to start kind of rolling my eyes a little bit. but they do it in certain instances where I'm just kind of like, okay, it's actually it's timed fairly well.
Yeah.
Like when like you said, when Bruce turns around and Alfred's gone, and I'm just like, dang, Alfred gave him the slip. That is actually really awesome. Or even what is it on the roof when Gordon and Harvey and Batman are all talking, then it's like turns around, Batman's gone. Gordon's just like, oh, I guess it's just us. Turns around, Harvey's like, he just jetted down the stairs. Like you caught the last few seconds of it. But I was freaking laughing because like it was a funny line right afterwards too, where he's just like, I guess I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, and like if Harvey had been already off the roof, then I probably wouldn't have laughed at it. But the fact that like Harvey's just booking it, you know, and you see him booking it, like, and it's like, guess I'm just talking to myself. Like the comedic timing on it really, really worked. And it's not like Harvey's also a ninja or something who just vanished. It's just like, no, just like, there he goes. So yeah, like it worked out pretty well. And again, being able to take that kind of like over-treaded trope and joke of every Batman media we ever get and make it not feel tired and boring, like that takes some effort. And I mean, that's not just the writing, that also has to do with the animation and the voice performers and all those things. But like overall it's solid, and like the writing gives a solid setup to make that still feel fresh.
Totally. And then and then while we're getting into it, how about some of those action sequences in the movie?
The action sequences in the movie are, and I kind of touched upon that earlier a little bit, but like the action sequences in the movie are really good. And early on in the movie, we get an action sequence that exists nowhere in the book. The Chinatown fight. Well, at least it does. There's a thing in the book that they pulled from to create it, but like as it exists in the movie, that's not in the book. Batman doesn't have a ninja fight in the middle of Chinatown where Catwoman comes and helps him kick the ass of these like three, Yakuza dudes who have like crazy martial arts weapons and crap. And when it first started happening, I was just like, really? You're going to do this in this movie? And then like about 30 seconds into the fight, I was like, okay, damn it, this is cool.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah, this is awesome. And you get like great little moments too, where it's not just like in that fight, it's cool because again, you're dealing with a Batman who's early on in his career and he is highly trained, but he's also taking out 3 Yakuza hitmen who have like probably been doing this for far longer than he has. And there are moments in there where Batman can't just win based on his fighting prowess alone. He does have to use his brain or his smarts to kind of, figure out ways to outdo them. One of my favorites was like, you've got the guy who's got like the chain weapon and all that stuff, and Batman just takes a batarang and throws it, and you're like, dude, you missed him completely, and then it hits the end of the weapon, and the end of the weapon flies back and hits the guy in the face, and that made me laugh out loud. And I was just like, okay, that's great, showing a little bit of that Batman ingenuity that we all love. It's not just about him being the baddest badass. He is clever, and the great thing about the action sequences in the movie is not only are they executed well in terms of animation and in terms of the fight choreography, but they're all character driven. So watching these characters fight teaches you about this version of the characters, which every fight in every movie should do. It's like one of the things about like the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie that doesn't carry over to the others is like when you watch every like fight in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, you're learning about those characters through what they do in those action sequences, and it really adds a lot. It makes you invested in the fight beyond just who wins and who loses.
Yeah, they're not just like, they're not action sequences for action sequence's sake. And I think that's a very good way of looking at it, is that they're all deliberate and they all serve a purpose to the greater story. Yeah. That Chinatown sequence was definitely one where I was just like, my eyes were glued to the screen. I'm just watching trying to examine every little detail about it. And just finding things really interesting, like Batman, against the really big guy. He's like, okay, this guy's too much even for me kind of deal. So let me try to just tase the shit out of this dude. And the dude breaks out of the taser, and I'm just like, now what?
Yeah.
Of course, that's when Catwoman comes down, like, gives him a hand there.
And I did appreciate
And
that when Catwoman is introduced into that fight, it's not like Batman's getting his ass handed to him and then Catwoman shows up and easily takes them out. It's like
Mhm.
she shows up to help him and save him, and then they work as a team to finish the fight off. Like, it was pretty well done in terms of that. It wasn't supposed to be like a woke girl power moment. Like, it's
Oh,
more
no,
about
definitely
those
not.
two characters and their growing relationship. Which again, because Catwoman is a more central role in this movie, that's important to establish. And this fight goes a long way to helping establish that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually and that's where I was going to lead into kind of like the next part was the partnership between Batman and Catwoman, and also the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. Like, in terms of like the Batman Catwoman stuff, it was, I mean, I really liked it. It was all like really good. I love the way the two like played off of each other, in terms of like, not just, actions that were taken, but also like the dialogue and stuff like that. Um, and also very interesting when we get to the point they kind of realize, or not they realize, but the audience realizes that, yeah, these two definitely know who each other are in terms
Yeah.
of like secret identities and stuff like that. Which, later on, also towards the end of the movie, creates an issue or two, but
But it
but
is
still,
nice though.
huh?
It is nice in a lot of ways though, because like there is a conversation early on in the movie that, or like at one certain point in the movie, that Batman or that Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle have, where
Mhm.
like once you know that they know who each other are under the mask, that conversation takes on a new context. And when you
Yeah.
watch it the first time, you're like, okay, well, like maybe they're doing a thing here, but it's played kind of down the middle where like it sounds like a fairly reasonable like breakup conversation. But like then once you know for a fact that they know who each other are, it takes on a totally different connotation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because like it's really interesting when you see the aspects of like the Batwoman Catwoman relationship, where it's like these two they just gel, they connect, they're with it, they work so well together. But then when you see that juxtaposed with the Bruce Wayne Selina Kyle relationship, which we didn't get much of, which I was kind of a little disappointed about that. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more with that, where Selina Kyle still showing up to Thanksgiving and stuff. Where this is where Bruce is failing. This is where he's not really, like seemingly making an effort, although he's doing something really nice on Thanksgiving for Solomon Grundy.
Yeah.
But still, that's where it kind of like leads you to believe that he's all with the relationship in one aspect, but just not with the more normal parts.
Yeah, and like depending on what they do with it in the next movie, I just hope it doesn't go into a weird like Black Cat Spider-Man territory where like Black Cat has no interest in Peter Parker. She likes Spider-Man, you know?
Mhm.
So like but like honestly, I do really enjoy the relationship overall in the movie. Like we get sequences where we see that they force each other to like up the ante of like their own performance, like in terms of what they're doing physically and like also psychologically and mentally. But like their love life relationship seems to be a little bit more stagnant. It seems like they really only bring out the best in each other when they're in their costumes. And that's something that
Right.
Selena, because of her tendency to be a cat burglar, knows is doomed on a certain level. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's complex, and that's
Mhm.
nice because so often it's made way too simple. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
hot, he's hot, they want to bang.
But
Yeah,
I mean that you know, questions, sure, but not entirely problematic.
no, yeah,
I
yeah,
would say, which did lead to another like scene later in the movie that I actually thought was kind of funny, where Selena Kyle was trying to talk to Falcone's son Alberto, and he completely misreads the situation.
yeah. And that scene, we're about to jump into the things that we didn't like about the movie, so I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
that's as good a transition scene as
Mhm.
any. because I really loved that scene throughout that entire part of it. Because for those of who, again, spoilers, not just for the movie and the book, but also for the sequel to The Long Halloween, which is, well, there's actually technically 2 sequels to Long Halloween, but like what we eventually find out is that Catwoman either is or believes that she is the illegitimate child, of Falcone.
Mhm.
So like that scene worked on so many levels for me up to a certain point because they're talking and really connecting, and he's like, I for some reason I just feel like I can talk to you. So if you know about like where that character eventually goes and what you find out about Selena Kyle within the framework of that story, it makes sense and is really good. And then he tries to kiss her and she's like, oh no, I can't. And like it's such a good moment, and then it's ruined.
And then this is where it happens, and now we are transitioning into some criticisms
Yeah.
of the film.
And like there's things earlier in the movie that I didn't care for, but let's just go ahead and talk about this because it's literally my biggest problem in the entirety of the frickin' movie. After that amazing Joker climactic, kind of what seems like the big climactic fight of the movie, right about that time, in that fight, Batman puts together in his own mind that, Alberto might be Hush, or he believes that, or not Hush, I'm
The
sorry,
holiday killer.
Holiday Killer. He believes that he's the Holiday Killer. So then, literally, right after that moment of her being like, "Oh no, I couldn't," Batman jumps up on the boat, all like dripping wet, having, I guess, just swam from the shore to get there. We're not shown. And then the moment he jumps up, she goes, "Bruce!" And home dude's like, Bruce Wayne? So the moment it happens, you know that he's not the killer and you know that he's going to die.
Yep.
Because he has to in order for the rest of this universe to actually work in any way, shape, or form. And I don't, number one, I hate that Selena Kyle does that, like just outs him. Like, would she be surprised? Yeah, I guess she'd be surprised. But also, like, they've shown her to be intelligent and emotionally stable enough throughout the course of this movie that I don't think she would just exclaim Bruce like that. And it's obviously done for a couple of different reasons. One is because they want you to be like, oh no, now Home Dude knows who Batman is. And two, it's because they need you to understand that they both know who each other are, so that that scene that I was talking about earlier that works so well once you know they know, so that that can work on multiple levels. But then it's made even worse by the fact that the Holiday Killer shows up and shoots the dude, and then they're on a boat, and there's like a chase sequence, which is, the chase itself is relatively well done, but then Holiday gets away. Like, he's on a boat, he gets away. And as much as the animation is good and it's a fun little action set piece, we just saw Batman using his grapple gun to like hook onto a plane that's like 100 feet to 200 feet away, and then like climb up on the plane and all this crazy physical stuff. And sure, he's tired, but like, you expect me to believe he can't catch this dude on this boat? Like, and that's something that's not in the book,
Mm-hmm.
Like, Home Dude is killed on their yacht, but not in the same situation. So it's like, and actually, spoilers, but he's not really killed on the boat anyway. But yeah, like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Because I've already gone through it in my video. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this is the point of the movie where everything we've ever learned about any of the characters is completely thrown out the window in the name of just trying to get this movie over so we can get to part 2, essentially, which is, of course, we got to make sure the Holiday Killer gets away. We got to make sure that, all the loose ends are tied up, because the minute Alberto finds out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, like, it's like, okay, he's obviously going to die.
Yep.
And yeah, and of course I was expecting it. And then immediately, like just minutes after finding out, he's killed. And how much I disliked Selena calling out like Bruce. It's like, okay, I get it. You know, again, I get what you're saying in terms of like, okay, there's probably a reason why they needed it to happen, but at the same time, you know, it's something she wouldn't do
No.
because even though they know each other's identities, they know the importance of those secrets. And also, like, even earlier in the scene, the breakup scene, for example, which was executed really, really, really well. And this is like right at the end is where you find out, okay, these two know who each other are because, you know, she like after she steals his watch and he's asking, you know, hey, what did you do that? I need to know. Like, presumably I took that as, you know, can you teach me that trick kind of thing? Because that's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, but then she, you know, she says a line of dialogue that she said way earlier at the beginning of the movie, you know, when they found the pallets of money. So right there, I'm like, you know, the way he didn't react to that line at all, I'm like, okay, this is the point I know that they know who each other are. And
Yeah.
then when we get to the scene where he jumps on and she's screaming his name, I'm just like, okay, this is completely contradictory to everything you've told me about this character up to this point. And then the manufactured drama of, ooh, well, yeah, you know, a Falcone knows Batman's identity. You know, maybe he'll take this information back to his dad or something like that. But then pop, pop, pop. And then the chase sequence happens, and I'm thinking a few things about this chase sequence. I'm like, okay, one, Batman, you know, okay, he's inexperienced. I will agree. But he's also still Batman in terms of his physicality and stuff like that. He is in, you know, I would assume peak physical condition to be able to do half the things he does. And being able to catch this guy, you know, because it does that thing in movies that I sometimes hate where it sees that they're kind of close, but then they go to a next shot and the guy's like got like, you know, 10, 20 feet on him somehow. And I'm also thinking about like this guy just shot a Falcone on the ship, and there's a bunch of mobsters, Falcone's guys, all over the ship.
Yep.
Nobody heard that. Nobody sees the killer running through. Where's all of Falcone's goons that would probably armbar the guy or like, you know, crossbar him something? Just like, boom.
Yeah, and mind you, like, Home Dude, like, when he's killed, that's off to the side, so maybe no one really realized that that's what happened. But still, if you have someone opening fire on Falcone's ship, like, and not only that, both mob families are on this freaking boat. Both the mob families, not to mention tons of like probably police officers and public. Actually, no, the police officers are all in the main square of town because they're worried about Holiday attacking there. So that's fair. But from top to bottom, this whole sequence is so contrived.
Yeah.
There are so many things that don't work about it. And it's like, it's only really there to give us yet another like climax. Joker can't be the climactic battle of the movie because it's not about the Joker. It's about the Holiday killer.
Probably should have been.
Yeah, like honestly, he should have been, instead of doing the thing, which by the way, I remember what the tag is. The tag is Bruce Wayne going home. The post credits is Bruce Wayne going home and then like Poison Ivy being there. You know, because at the end of the movie in the funeral, we show her like infect him with her like stuff, you know? But like really what it should have been is like the Joker thing should have ended the movie, and the post-credits scene should have been the killing of you know, the Falcone's son. You know? Like that's probably how it should have ended. But yeah, like everything from top to bottom about this scene is contrived, and it's like there's a million ways that Batman could have stopped him. Let's say Batman is tired from fighting Joker, and there's a bunch of people around, so he can't maybe do some of the things he would normally do. It's a big yacht. It's not that big. And as I said, that even when Holiday gets on the boat, the distance between the yacht and the boat is less than the distance between Batman and the airplane when his grapple gun hooked onto the airplane. Now, if they had shown us him having to like ditch some of his gear so he could swim over to the yacht or something, then maybe that would have worked. But yeah, like there's too many other possibilities for things that could have happened, and what they did was like the least logical version of it. And
Yeah,
it
I
hurts
would
all
say.
characters.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was gonna say, yeah, this scene is definitely the epitome of we needed to happen to keep the plot going.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
really, really all it boiled down to. So, and that really was like some of the probably the biggest issue of this movie was the ending. Because up to this point, yes, there are definitely some small minor nitpicks, which we'll touch on a few of those smaller ones too here in a sec. But when you have a movie that essentially has given me like a pretty decent high in terms of entertainment, and then you decide to just slap me down right at the end, uh, it creates a very jarring effect in feeling in terms of how am I supposed to feel about this movie, because I loved pretty much all of it. And I'm not saying the ending is like the worst thing to ever happen in cinema. It's not like
No.
the worst, way to end your movie, but just in terms of the contradictions and characterizations,
Yeah.
uh,
If you
you
wanted the
know,
sequence to end the movie, there's a way you could make it work, but this
yeah,
isn't it.
exactly. It definitely could have used, probably a reread or two, I would say,
Yeah.
to see if they could try to
Yeah.
flesh it out a little bit. But I mean, at the end of the day, they were probably just like, well, our hands are most likely tied. This is the only way we can kind of do it. That makes sense. I don't know. Maybe they just ran out of time. But for it's
Yeah.
like, hey, we got to, this is still a studio. We got to chop chop.
Well,
But
sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, but I was gonna say in terms of like some other things in the movie that probably could have been handled a little better. I definitely I think we it's okay to like talk about the whole. At first, I thought it was a running joke. I can't really say because it's really interesting, and that is the constant poking that Batman kind of sucks as a detective.
It's not even poking because like it comes up like 5 times in the movie, and
Yeah,
finally, like the last time it comes up is Batman straight out, like flat out stating that he never intended for the Batman to be a detective, which I don't remember. Maybe that's in the book. I don't think so. Again, it's been like a
it was.
year and a half since I read the book last, so I
Yeah,
could
it
be
was definitely
mistaken.
an odd piece of dialogue.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that it comes up so often that like it becomes really because here's the thing, even if he never intended the Batman to be a detective, even if he's not that good a detective, we know that at some point he is known as the world's greatest detective, despite the fact that Detective Chimp is a better detective than him and he openly admits it. And then at some point, Tim Drake becomes a better detective than him and he openly admits it. He's known as the world's greatest detective. So when you keep throwing that concept in the face of your audience that Batman sucks as a detective, again, this isn't Earth 1. Like that's something that is an inherent part of the character that's known round the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of frustrating. And the only reason I can really think of that they would try to hammer this home so hard is because the truth of the matter is the mystery aspect of the Long Halloween is kind of one of the weakest things about it. Especially
Mhm.
if they're not going to pull a Hush and totally change the ending. Because the mystery in Hush is also one of the weakest things in that story. Jeph Loeb, he's a great writer sometimes when he's not writing Ultimatum. But like when he does a mystery, he tends to have trouble sticking the landing. And for
Yeah.
me in Long Halloween, the landing of the mystery never really sold me on it, when we eventually get to what it is. So only thing I can think of is they emphasize that so much to make up for the fact that when they get to the reveal of the mystery, that the fact that it's something that Batman should have easily figured out. By the way, on that last sequence we were talking about, in the scene where they show Holiday shoot him, they get a close up of Holiday's face, and it's clearly Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
Like there's no two ways about it. It is clearly Harvey Dent. So
Well, I mean, heck, even the Joker sequence between him and Harvey really was it. That was the scene that basically told you that he's the
yeah,
holiday killer.
yeah. So like it's like, oh man. Like that's the only reason I feel like that was emphasized so much is to kind of try to like whenever they eventually get to the disappointing reveal of the mystery, that you're not like, well, how didn't Batman figure that out? Well, it's because the movie made sure you know he's a shit detective.
Yeah. And what's really interesting was like how much Batman was constantly trying to even discount the possibility of Harvey Dent as as a suspect, because even Calendar Man threw it out there.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't mind that as much, because I kind of like the idea that Batman wants to believe in this guy so much that he refuses to see it. Like, that feels like a very human thing, that Batman could still be capable of being that fallible in that way. But when you combine it with the whole him not being a very good detective, it's like it one or the other.
Well, I mean, see, that's where I kind of feel like if they just made him a good detective and then just made him not want to see the truth, that may have played a little better, because they're definitely, in terms of like the detective work and like the pokes that they made at him, Batman comes across as very incompetent. I mean, even the scene with the Joker, where the Joker's like, even I want to solve this puzzle, right? And then suddenly it's just like a flash, a wave of like Batman just, I know who the Holiday Killer is.
I know someone who like
110%. There is no room for error or anything like that. And I'm sitting there in my brain like, dude, you are so freaking wrong, because the movie constantly told me that you are not good at this part.
Yeah. And like, if they had just kept it with the thing of, like you're saying, of him not wanting it to be Harvey Dent, then that would make sense, because all of a sudden it gives him another out. It gives him someone else that it could possibly be. And the fact that he's so willing to jump on it would make sense from a human standpoint, as opposed to it just being like, you really suck at being Batman, don't you? Damn. But yeah, that was an issue I had. And, like, this other thing, it's not even a big deal, but it's a nitpick. It is the nitpickiest of nitpicks. Why is Catwoman in the scene with the money? Like, in the book, she tells them to follow the money. And they eventually, Harvey and Batman, get to the money, and they decide to burn it. But in this, because they want to integrate Catwoman more as a character, now I give you that her laying on top of the money is a badass shot. Like, that's cool beyond reason. But the fact that, like, she literally leads Batman to the money, and then, like, she's there for the majority of the scene, and then she pulls a single match out of her boot. Like, now, someone in my comments on my video was like, who even carries matches? Which was funny, because I literally had matches in my pocket as I was reading that. And it's like established that like Batman does usually have waterproof matches in his utility belt. But what good is a single match in your boot gonna do you? Like, it's another one of those things where it's like, it's a nitpick, but like, I like that scene in the book because it's a moment for Batman and Harvey. Right. It's a moment to establish them, so that what happens to Harvey later is all that more tragic, and it also is meant to be there to highlight, the duality of Harvey, where he's like, well, if we were two other guys, and he's like, yeah, but we're not. Like, that's a great moment, and like, so much of the focus of that scene is pulled to Catwoman, and then it makes that scene longer than it needs to be also, which again, I get the reasoning for a lot of it, but I definitely prefer the scene the way it was originally.
Yeah, I can understand that, because I mean, that's the thing. Whenever you're working with these adaptations and stuff like that, there's always going to be a little push and pull. Even if you end up with a film that's, say, superior to its source material, there's still going to be some, there's going to be some minor details that the comic, of course, just did better. Yeah, because that was the original medium.
And even if she hadn't supplied the match, I think I would have been fine with it. But just the fact that it's not Batman and Harvey who make the decision to burn it, but Catwoman, who is like, gives them the match and is like, she's the impetus for the solution.
Yeah.
That's really what my issue is. Because even all the other stuff, like, is fine. And you need the line that she says, like you were saying later when she steals his watch, that you get, which really should have sufficed in terms of them knowing who each other are if they didn't before that, you know? But I do feel that, like, the decision, it not being wholeheartedly the decision of Harvey and Batman to burn the money, and the idea coming from her removes a little bit of the power of the moment. You know, these two men choosing to cross a line in this way together, like, is an important factor in the relationship of those characters. And I feel that that little touch really detracts from that quite a bit.
Damn, that's understandable, man. I definitely get what you're saying there. I have to go back and I have to reread that comic again. It's been quite some time.
Yeah, I plan on rereading it before the second volume comes. The second half of the movie comes out next month. I definitely plan on. That's why I have it out. You know, it's because as I was getting ready to do my video on it, I was like, "Well, this was different," and this was, and then I was like, "Is that different?" And I was just like going through, and I was like, "Oh wow!" Like, I remember all the big moments of this book, but there's a lot of little things.
Some of the smaller stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I kind of forgot Catwoman wasn't really there in the book.
Yeah, like again, there's still like the chase sequence and all that stuff that leads up to it, and she's the one who, like, because the chase that you see that in this movie takes them to the warehouse actually happens beforehand, earlier in the book, and then she tells Batman to follow the money. And then, like, gives them the indication of where it's at. But yeah, once you actually get to the sequence in the warehouse, because the chase actually happens in the book before Batman, Harvey, and Gordon meet on the rooftop, you know? But by the time that it's like them in the warehouse, it's just them. So yeah. So it's like, I'm sorry, I've got it right here. And so I'm looking to make sure. Yeah. So, like, literally right before that. So, like, Catwoman definitely leads them there in a roundabout way. But once you actually get to the warehouse, it's just the two guys.
Right on.
Yeah, and then you get, like, you know, the big double page splash of them and the money, which is a lot more impressive than in The Dark Knight, where it's just one pyramid of money that Joker slides down.
Hey, it's money.
But anyway, you know,
but
like,
yeah.
Anything else I could say in terms of things I didn't like are serious nitpicks, like things that I don't even really think detract from the story or characters. It's just things that didn't really work for me.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to get into all that, I guess, because this could probably go on for another hour if we did.
Yeah.
But that's just that. That's just any movie, because, you know, there's no such thing as a flawless film.
Oh no.
But yeah. So what do you, if you had to, like, just sum up your thoughts into, like, you know, a quick, like, out, like, you know.
I would say it is a relatively solid. It's a relatively solid introduction to this new version of Batman in this new universe that is hinged upon one of the best Batman stories and utilizes a lot of the same iconic moments and set pieces from that, with a slightly weak ending that might be made better by what comes in the second half of this movie. A lot of the flaws in this movie that I don't like, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is one movie broken into two, as opposed to actually being two movies in of themselves, but it needs to feel like two movies. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's probably like my basic thoughts. It's still something I definitely recommend to people, and it's something that I definitely enjoyed and I'll be watching again, despite the things that I didn't like about it. And I think it's better than Hush. Like the movie of Hush. So
yeah, I don't like. Yeah, I remember when we did our Hush stream, that one review went, like, that discussion went completely the other way as compared to this one. And yeah, I'm pretty much in the exact same chord as you. I think overall it's a solid movie. If you haven't watched it, which, you know, I know it just literally dropped, so if you're here listening to spoilers, wow, well, I guess thanks. You know, hopefully we were entertaining enough in that regard. But yeah, go check this movie out. It is pretty solid overall. I think, you know, everyone that watches it, Batman fan or not, is going to have a good time with it for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that, we have come to, what are we at? 1 hour and 9 minutes. Wow. We actually went a little longer than I thought we would, you know, by a few minutes. And I just want to thank everyone in the comment section. We've got Eric Breen saying, you know, keep it down, will you? We're trying to sleep in the States, you know. I'm sorry, but, you know, it's like, it's a very interesting, you know, dynamic we got going with like time zones and stuff like that. I can't completely help that. Mercenary X84, thank you for joining us, as well as Jeph Brosemer. Appreciate you as always. And looks like, yep, those were our guys. So again,
guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. If you want, you know, of course, the awesome take of Nerdscum, check out the link to his video down below, as well as a link to his channel. He has got some awesome content, and overall is just one of, you know, the best comic book YouTubers that nobody watches.
Right. Which is why a lot of my content these days isn't so much on comic books anymore. But I am covering the Crossed franchise, and those videos are doing pretty well. So if you want something extremely fucked up, I got you covered.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and as always, if you like this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And as always, take care. Have a great day. As always, stay geeky.
Nerdscum out.